been mentioned to me by people, let's say people in high places, that I shouldn't make fights sound so excited.
On the ice, whether you score a goal or a big fight, it's almost like you'd kind of race to get to the room to replay the tape just to see how Rick, said what was going on. And
Ray and Bonvie trying to exchange punches. Meanwhile, down on the ice goes Smolik. He tries to get up again, but down is Bonvie as Ray applies the coup de grace.
And if it's bothering you that much, then take fighting out of the game. Don't blame me if they start fighting. I didn't tell them to fight.
Meanwhile, Portick is still wrestling with Ray. Nobody, I believe, has thrown any punches. Down on the ice they go.
Did you go to the guy?
There's no class for doing it. It's
how does one
it's
learn
all
your
nice
art?
experience, job experience, but no, it was just something you watched and you listened and you tried to talk to as many people as possible and hands-on training. That's pretty much all it was. I can remember nights that you're skating off and you're like, what the hell am I doing? Because you can't see, you're puffy, your hands are sore, and you're thinking to myself, is this really what I want? And then the next morning you wake up and I was like, yeah, that's what I want. So you went back and did the same thing. But there's no formal training, trust me, for playing this role, because you don't go to practice and pick out somebody and get in a fight with them just to practice, for the next day's game. It's very difficult, and it's something that you have to learn to take a punch, not only give one, but take one's more important.
So they bring you up your first game, October 21st, 1989. You're playing the Pittsburgh Penguins. Tom Barrasso, former Sabres, their goalie, and they're bringing you up to be an enforcer. And then your first shot on goal.
First shift, first shot, I scored a goal. I was like, what the? What took me so long? This is going to be easy. And actually, at times during the game, I had thoughts going through my mind. I'm going, like, Gretzky, maybe he's not as good as I thought he was. I was able to do this. And that night, I got a goal and assist, and I was +3. And statistically wise, it was the best game I ever had in the NHL. It was my first game. So it went downhill from there.
You had 2,897 penalty minutes with the Sabres, which I think is still an NHL record with a single team.
Yeah.
It is a
It
congratulations.
was over 3,000.
Well, total, yeah, with the, and 3,207. It's take a bow. And
Hang my hat on that.
but okay,
Kid.
but Rob Ray is out in the public. You're a well-known name, and this is even during your playing days. Did guys ever want to come up and
Never. Honest to God, I never had that problem. The closest I had one night, it was when the night Matthew Barnaby got called up, and he was all proud. He had a new suit on and everything, and he was just thought he was in the top of the world. And I had knee surgery at the time. That was the reason he got called up. And so we go out one night, and these guys, they weren't really looking good. But Matthew got all brave and thought he was going to show everybody, how cool a guy he was. And they actually took him outside and kicked it. And he's like, "Where were you guys?" And he comes walking in, his brand new suit, he's got the arm ripped out, and he's all tore up, and he's banged up. We take him to the rink the next day. We had to make an excuse that we got fooling around that, he got banged up that way. But no, I never had that problem. Never did.
What's your most joyous moment?
I think, obviously your first game, type thing. But other than that, I think it was that same season when we beat Toronto in the conference final to go to the Stanley Cup. We were in Toronto, and it was when you go to Toronto, you ride the bus. You bus up, and that ride from Toronto home, it seemed like it was 8 hours long, but it was the funnest time and the closest I've ever been to a bunch of guys, and how excited everybody was, and it was just unbelievable. It was like you were contained in this little capsule, and the happiest 30 guys in the world right at that moment, with coaching and trainees and the players, and it was something that you didn't want to get off the bus. When you hit Buffalo, it was like it was a disappointment because you had to get off and head your own way. So that was the neatest, just getting that opportunity.
And then during that series with Toronto, during Game 4, you scored the winning goal.
Single-handedly broke the Leafs back.
Yeah.
No, it was far. It was good, and you got the opportunity, and I think any person when they play a sport, they just want to feel like they did their part and be a part of it, and that was my opportunity. Well, because he is a guy that, makes it so exciting. And he did so many years on the radio that, he had to present it in a way to keep the attention of the people from not watching it. And he's, I say he's the best in the business out there. You hear an awful lot of guys and you listen to watch TV all the time, and it's not even close. I still say the league's missing out on the boat by not using a guy like Rick Jeanneret in national broadcasts. You've got Versus, which, it struggles because, people don't pay attention to it. Nothing against Doc Emmerich, but he's boring, and he sits there and he talks about everything but the game. I'm thinking if you had a guy like Rick Jeanneret, doing the game, and people are flipping through and they're hearing this guy, it would stop them. It would stop them to listen. Whether it was the game or not, they would stop and listen to him. And I constantly tell that to the people, and that they're missing the boat, not having a guy like Rick, present the game in a national stage, because I think you could attract so more people doing it. But on the other hand, Rick Jeanneret owes the players for making him. Pat LaFontaine, Brad May, the fights, the goals. If it wasn't for that, Rick Jeanneret would still be at Clancy's in Niagara Falls. Clancy's a little bar that he likes going to. I tell him that all the time, and he gets mad.
Yeah. Hence, he's grumpy.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the French Connection.
I didn't even know who the French Connection were when I came here. And quickly I found out about them. And Gilbert Perreault, to start with, is still a guy that the problem is with Gilbert when he left, and it was with the Knoxes, that they left on bad note, and it wasn't something that was fixed until years later, and now it's turned back to a little bit of that sour note again, and it's unfortunate because as a player we look at Gilbert, and most of us never played with him, but we look at him, and when you talk Buffalo Sabres, you think Gilbert Perreault. Nobody else you think is Gilbert Perreault, and to have a guy like him around, it's awesome, and he's the funniest guy that you ever go to meet, and he's around, and now all he thinks about is casino and sell my equipment and all that kind of. But he's so sincere, and he still to this day, when he's in town and you talk to him about the team, he follows the team to a T. He knows exactly what's going on. He's got an opinion about what he thinks right or wrong is going on, and he still has that passion for the Sabres, and I think that's awesome.
Rob, you may not know this, but during the 90s there was always this guy right on ice who was heckling you all the time and all over your case. And we brought him here especially today to ask you a question. Yeah, and he brought his bodyguards with him as well. So I'll introduce you to John Lloyd. John, if you're to stand, he's the guy that was heckling you, don't there? Yeah, that was the guy. Remember you talked about this guy from
but just look at him. Just look at him. There's no sense of fear whatsoever coming from that body.
John, do you have a question, or your bodyguards have a question?
Bodyguard grew out through his hair.
It's from Hockey Digest, and they asked you the funniest hockey memory, and you started with that time in Quebec City about 15 years ago. Talk about that.
That was a totally different situation. There's a fight on the ice. There was a 5-on-5 fight. Clint Malarchuk and Herb Ragland, those guys were fighting on the ice, and while we're all watching it, this guy had climbed up on the glass behind the bench, and he was sitting there. And John Muckler, we all kind of noticed at the same time, and Mucks grabbed a stick, and he was running down the bench. He was going to hit the guy to knock him back into the stands. The last second, he drove into the bench, and we literally grabbed on him, threw him on the ice, thinking it was over with. He jumps from the ice, comes running back, and tries jumping back into the bench, and that's when he came to us, and we ended up fighting him. I had a ball of hair, and hit him so many times, and he just kind of dropped to the ice, and the police were out there jumping on him and wrestling around with him, and the bullets were falling out of the holsters of the police, and they're laying all over the ice, and we're sitting there going, "What the hell what's this all about?" And it was something that happened so quick, and it was over with.